Recording in progress, just so you all know. Good morning, Danny. Thanks for joining us. Morning, John. Morning, Junpo.
Hello.
Hope you can hear us.
Yes.
Morning.
Because if we bring them closer, then we can only see like 1.5 people.
Should I put my chair on here? So
Snug up alongside me. Do an open circle.
yeah.
Make that work.
Clear.
Gives you someone to look at, right? Yeah, we had a huge crowd for sitting. They all just couldn't stick around for the rest. You know it.
Daiki by telling them how we ended up down there.
Sure. I hope you all have your coffee on hand, by the way. Okay.
You guys are gonna have to speak up.
Okay, so we do have to bring it closer.
I would, yeah, it would be easier, I think.
You end up staring at like half a person when we get on the table here.
We want to sit at the cool kids table. There we go.
So there's one person. Here's two. We'll rotate as necessary. So yeah, it started off last what day is which?
That's 2 weeks ago.
Two Saturdays ago. I had a friend of mine who's an Episcopal minister in town reach out and tell me that there was a call she had received for clergy across the country to come to Minneapolis for grounding, presence, witness, and awareness. And asked to share the info, and I said, hell yeah. So there's a Minneapolis-based organization called the Multi-Faith Anti-Racism Change and Healing Minnesota. Maybe there's not a thought in front of that.
Can you say that again?
Multi-faith anti-racism change and healing. I did try. There we go.
You got it.
So they had put out a nationwide call to clergy of all denominations to come in for this. And their plan was they held a webinar early in the week for anyone who was on the fence. But ultimately everyone that was cleared to show up was asked to come in for the full day Thursday for a collective convening, grounding, and training and organizing for the day of action. And then, all day Friday, there were things to participate in. So we actually, between Roshin and I, registering for this, they meet capacity. They had too many people and had to start turning people down.
700.
And so 700 was how many people they had. That was their capacity for their training and leadership organization. That's how many showed up on Thursday and Friday. So we chose to just go along with our personal contacts. We landed at Clouds and Water Zen Temple in St. Paul. And we're heartily welcomed there. And
heartily welcome's a funny way of putting it. I love the Zen crowd. And Daiki had only had contacted a few people there. Have you met her before? The woman, yeah, Aisho. Yeah, neither one of us had met this woman before who had the keys to the place, but both of us had been to the temple and know people there. I love the sense of community though when you show up in Minnesota at 8 o'clock at night, knock on a random door, and she says, are you Roshin and Daiki? Oh yeah, yeah. So well, here's your key and here's the passcode for the security lock. You guys know your way around, right?
He was also concerned that we were going to be comfortable enough, considering there's no actual bedrooms.
Yeah. So the initial touchdown was very, very warm and welcoming.
Yeah. So we made the trip out there. Actually, I mean, I will say that I've been involved in a lot of organizing here in town, and there's an upswell of people willing to donate funds as well as people in our community. Um, a friend actually donated their vehicle for Roshan and I to drive out together. My Episcopal friends were not able to make the convening because their bishop had already set a diocesan meeting that day to talk about the likelihood of ice coming into the UP. But we made the trip without any terrible circumstance, and it was very nice when we. Was there anyone there when we put stuff there?
Nope, had the whole temple to ourselves when we showed up there.
Just came in on our own, but of course the next morning everything started. We got up. I can't remember. Was it 6:30? Started 7. There was a two
It's too late. That's what I remember.
Two periods of zazen, Heart Sutra, and merging difference in unity. Nice
full service.
Full service.
That's Friday.
That was Thursday.
Oh,
Thursday. Yeah, because we didn't change our plans at all. After, because it seemed prudent, considering everyone was very straightforward in saying do a proper risk assessment. Make sure you feel comfortable with this. Make sure you can handle this. Don't show up if you're not able to encounter what's actually going on here. It's worse than the media is telling you. So do all of your due diligence. And so to me, I thought especially not meeting with the crowd, I thought it important that we be there a day in advance to get a feeling, for how safe and secure we are just in our standards, and start to touch base. Because again, we have practiced with some of these people, but most of them not very much or very long. So establishing some rapport I thought was important. And that fell in on its own because once service was done, then we had a novice priest looking at us going, do you want breakfast? We've got leftover food from our last session and someone needs to eat it. So it was really nice. We sat down to breakfast with that priest and another practitioner there who was pretty new to practicing with them. And started the arduous labor of hearing their stories and hearing what the past couple of months have been like for the people there.
Yeah, I'm glad we ended up going solo. It gave us a chance to, instead of meeting clergy from across the nation, we got to settle in and meet some locals. Have breakfast, break bread with them. And after that, we decided the best way to get a feel for, to bear witness to this community and see what was going on was to wander around in it. Sure, my mother was excited about that idea. So we decided after that to hit up a Cambodian restaurant, which was only a couple blocks away from the temple. The temple is right smack dab in the middle of it,
It's quite close to downtown St. Paul.
Yeah, downtown St. Paul. So we hiked the 4 or 5 blocks to test out our winter gear. We needed more layers. Good thing we did that test. Walked down to the Cambodian restaurant and had some absolutely wonderful food there. Not very busy. That whole corridor we were on, and I mean I know it was negative. Feels like negative 29 when you add in the wind. But that's a crowded community. I mean, if cars are any indicator, there's millions of people there. Hardly any of them out. Um, we got lucky with the Cambodian restaurant. They actually had their door unlocked. Um, Wonderful food there. And then hiked down to a Hmong Cultural Center and Museum just a couple blocks down the road. And this is, when I started noticing every single business, door, house had a brand new Ring camera. It's Minnesota. Winter does things to plastic. These Ring cameras, are only a couple months old. They haven't been there for very long. The cultural center and museum was interesting. It took some doing to get inside. There were signs up all over the place. All the doors were shuttered, windows were shuttered. Signs kept telling us that they were open. We just needed to approach the right door and hit the button at the right time.
One of these doors always lies. One of these always tells the truth.
Yeah, yeah. It's a bit of struggle to actually get in there. After a while, we were allowed in by a very, very, very anxious looking man who said, "Oh, what are you looking for?" So, we came to see the community center and the museum. Okay, come on in. Lets us in and heads us up the stairs while locking, 3 or 4 locks behind us. Again, this is a cultural center. They've got classes on languages, daycare, citizenship classes going on, and just empty, very quiet. Not a lot of people. That was so Thursday. After that, what did we do? That's right. We decided to go back and be a lazy monks, take a nap at the temple, warm up, put on another couple of layers, and then like a couple of farm boys, decide to take the metro to go see our some of Donnie's friends, contacts. This is really fun. We got to meet with the Buddhist community first, and then we got to meet some just normal community members.
Yeah. They had training. We didn't ultimately we didn't attend in an official capacity. We didn't go with March. So all day long, those 700 clergy were gathering, and I need to come back to the Thursday night, but
yeah,
they were. I'm not sure all of what they were doing, but at the very least, they were trying to organize who was willing to do what. Because the next day, there was not just the main march, there were also protests at the airport. There was a protest at the Whipple building, which is being used as the detention center, and other different areas there. And in fact, if you haven't seen the news pieces and you'd like to, there was 100 clergy that were arrested at the airport as an act of civil disobedience. That was organized by March.
Including the little old monk that made us breakfast on Thursday.
Yes, if we haven't confirmed that, but it's quite presumptible, just stature alone. But but Thursday, I think it was a Universalist Unitarian center. Yeah, but I don't, because we didn't, and I haven't. In fact, I have contacts with folks that were there, and I'll probably be seeing them soon. But
Do you know what the charges were for the 100 clergy that were arrested?
the really interesting thing is the media reports it that we were over capacity on our permit for the protest. Logic would dictate that if it just happened to be an overcapacity thing, that the protest would be happening and then a response would show up to arrest people. But when the protest started, there were 3 school buses sitting there and 50 troopers. So again, this was intentional civil disobedience. It wasn't an over permit thing. These 100 priests were anticipating to do what they needed to block the roadway, to insist that they were then removed by the authorities to make a stand.
So
Do you know what happened to them?
They were processed, charged with a misdemeanor, and released within an hour or two. I haven't, things have been moving so fast. I haven't read much into it. I did see a headline trying to look up the news piece last night, in which one of the clergy was saying that it was a non-violent action, but it was not, no, yeah, it was not, it was non-violent, but it was not peaceful, which is to say that they were shockingly handled roughly by the police. Like I said, I haven't read that article yet. I just saw the headline.
but Thursday night.
Yeah, so Thursday night, and this to me is kind of another piece of, obviously our Buddhist practice has been a really great network and community to build, especially with practice out at Rumanji. That's how we got the contacts for St. Paul to begin with. But in just my local Marquette organizing, I had run across one individual through a group called We the People, which is specifically politically activism, and another one who I've met through Rainbow Pride, our pride organization up here, who both are now in the Twin Cities, and both of which I've met 2 or 3 times, mostly in passing, but had comfortable enough contact to reach out to them, say, hey, we're coming. And one of them allowed us to use their address as a place to send goods, that we couldn't get here in time before we left. But then we met at the one's house for dinner that night. Humorously, I messaged him in advance saying, by the way, we're in contact with this other person. Would you mind if I invited them over for dinner too? The reply was, well, they were actually the best person at my wedding. So believe it or not, they're already invited. Those small communities, even in the big cities, they wrap up together. But that was a really heartwarming time, a good moment to, again, just touch base with some more people, build some more community, and be able to not only relax ourselves and our own nerves, but help them step back a little bit and just feel some outside community, feel seen and understood by others.
And so what was Tony's deal, right? I mean, he's the property manager.
So yeah, the main friend whose house we went to, Tony, he lives in a cooperative residential apartment community, which is largely inhabited by graduate students, which are largely of diverse ethnicities and backgrounds. And yeah, he was his particular building's manager for the cooperative there. And they were working, not working, they had established already a regular ice watch for their property so that they could let people know. And in fact, he mentioned that they're close enough to the highway that they would see, ICE patrolling in. But since they're kind of right on the off ramp from one highway to another, they were typically traveling past. They hadn't come in to shake them down yet. They were on their way out, but they were keeping watch for that for one another. Also, his partner, who joined us late, had just been officially elected to union leadership for her graduate student union that she was a part of, and they were also very integral in supporting the march effort Friday through town. And in addition, we also had her father there, who had driven in from Detroit, who, kind of like us, had no particular strings attached, but was just there to be a part of the effort.
Yeah, it was another small world moment when we walk into this apartment with 2 people that Daiki kind of knows, through his activist networks. And there's this guy sitting in the dining room, and I look at him and he looks at me and I know you. Says, I think I know you too. We left it at that, and about probably an hour into the meal. I looked at him. I said, did you shop at the co-op a lot? And he says, yeah, we've got a vacation home not too far from the old location, and we shop there all the time. So yeah, this is a guy I know. It's really interesting going so far away and running into so many people you know. But he was there again. He was there for the same reason we were, which is that he did not trust entirely what he was being told or was seeing on television. Obviously, he was worried about his daughter down there, and decided to come down, participate in the protests, and see what was happening. Um, Almost all of this trip so far, Daiki and I have been stubbornly staying in the present moment, pressing forward, trying not to think too much about things. There's an underlay of fear and anxiety constantly going on with all this. Like I said, beautiful, welcoming. So many people, when they found out that we had come, miles away, just to see what was happening, were overtaken with emotion. People I hardly knew wanted hugs. Yeah, it was really nice to not only settle in and see how the Buddhist community was, but outside of the community and see what the general feeling was going on. That night, I spoiled myself by looking up some of the activities the other priests were involved in, and that's when I found out that they were doing trainings, but part of the trainings they were doing was to do the dangerous terrorist activities that Alex there was engaged in. I sat there on the temple floor Thursday night with my sleeping bag wrapped around my head. It's 55 degrees on the floor, looking at my phone, and here I see Catholic and Lutheran and Episcopalian priests with their stoles on, blowing whistles and holding their phones up, just taping federal agents doing their job. Doing their job. So it was delightful to see, everybody was kind of touching down and experiencing the community. I found it ironic that we avoided the official thing and theoretically ended up in a safer situation than if we would have been with other clergy.
Do you want to go on to talk about opening of Friday?
Yeah, Friday. That's the first time we really saw, on the first morning we were there, there's only, I think, they said not very many people show up for the sittings. I think there's 6 people in the building. I didn't see the digital side. They, got their computer tucked away on, back there. But the next morning, starting around 7:30, people just started to slowly come in.
First, Tenzo showed up.
Yep, Tenzo showed up, cooked food, and
Tenzo showed up, found out they were Tenzo, and cooked food.
Yep. And opened up the meditation hall and did 3 bells to start a kind of open-ended sitting that was going to go on until the protests really started up. Beautiful crowd of the worst kind of people in our society. There were children playing. I always love that. There are 3 children playing in the vestibule there, and everybody was taking turns sitting in the zendo for a moment or two to gather themselves, making protest signs in one of the offices, or just sitting down and sharing food and getting to know the other people, spreading out supplies, toe warmers, and making plans for that day's activities. It was at 10 o'clock was the protest at the airport. Daiki and I jumped in with our buddy Shinsen, Troy Couliard. Now you can't. Donnie keeps telling me his name, and now I can't get it out of my head. Anyway,
it comes
Shinsen
himself.
Shinsen. We carpooled with him, and he lives. He says only like a mile or 2 away from the airport, so it's a regular part of his life driving people to and from the airports. It took quite a time to get into the parking garage and find a parking spot. He said he'd never seen it that busy before. You could tell that, the clergy was amassing. Got there, and the airport was kind enough to direct us to our approved protest zone. They immediately turned off the escalators that they gestured to the direction we needed to go. I thought that was an especially friendly move for the geriatric group of clergy that we had there. They thought ahead of us and turned off the escalators.
Of course, also with any, as with any grassroots organizing, we couldn't exactly ask anyone this way to the protest. We just had to look at people and go, is it this way to the to the concourse? Yeah, I think so. I don't know. No one's sharing where they're going.
Yeah.
They're just going.
Yeah. Got to the area, and I mean, again, I haven't seen the final count. Over 1,000.
It was absolutely over 1,000. I think it was closer to 2.
Yeah, it
by
felt
just my estimation.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Blocked the road, blocked the whole terminal.
This
Outside.
is outside. This is out in the cold.
Yeah, out in the cold, blocked the terminal, blocked the road to the terminal for probably a good 45 minutes before they started saying that if we didn't want to get
protest marshals,
if we didn't want to get arrested, we needed to move off of the road. Everybody got off the road, and not too long after that, the police started announcing that it was an unlawful gathering, that we had too many people there and needed to shut it down. They did that warning every 20 minutes for,
and also everybody except for the 100 clergy.
Well,
the people intending to be arrested,
yeah,
maintained their stance on the
they stepped out at one point.
Okay.
And at some point, 100 clergy, and again, they had been announcing over and over again, if you're in the road, you're going to get arrested, and you need to disperse. And at some point, 100 clergy who had already planned, again, civil disobedience, set out their kneelers, got into the road and kneeled down and started to pray. Daiki and I haven't prayed the Our Father in in a while. That Donnie's denying it. He might have done it more often than I did. That's the first time I've done the Our Father in a couple decades. It was powerful. Amongst the, I love the chanting, fuck ice out. It was interesting seeing how many clergy would take their breath during the fuck ice chant, and then everybody else could take a breath while the clergy chanted ice out. Prayers, songs. There's some indigenous elders there too, banging away on a dharma drum. Beautiful all around. But yeah, at that point they started arresting, picking up one by one, picking up the priests that were in the road and loading them up on the bus. At that point, those of us who had orders from our wives to not get arrested, Shinsen and I, jumped in the car and headed out of there. I'll let Daiki finish off that protest.
I mean, that pretty well wraps up the bulk of the airport. I stuck around to see more, and I just saw more people handcuffed and walked into buses.
They did walk to the bus.
They did walk to the bus.
Yeah.
And they did. I mean, like I said, I haven't read that article yet, so I don't know, if there's maltreatment in detention specifically or what have you. But that was kind of one of the things I wanted to stick around for the arrests to see, was, in case the violent, peaceful protesters were getting violent, or in case they ended up brutalized. From what I could tell, I mean, it's not a peaceful action to be arrested, coming from someone who was arrested along the roadside once for being an uninsured driver, which, seems like it should be pretty cozy. But it's not comfortable to be put in handcuffs and in a car. but there wasn't anyone slinging elbows that I could see. Um,
Luckily, I could almost feel a break in tension, realizing that it was just police officers that were there to arrest, not ICE agents.
yeah, no federal agents.
So things were done in an oddly
That
Yeah.
makes
Professional.
a huge difference.
huge difference. Very professional.
Police, they're local.
Mhm.
ICE is not local.
They're
That's
not.
why they're there.
They're not
Yeah.
wearing masks. None of these officers were masked. But yeah, headed back to the temple to regroup for the next.
Yeah. And back at the temple was pretty much what it was when we left it. Lovely crowd of people gathering in and out of sitting, doing signs, sharing stories, eating food, stripping layers, adding layers, grabbing hand warmers. Yeah, and then we started gathering for the 2 o'clock main march. I tried to urge my brother pretty early on, and he took it that if he was in pain, he should stay behind. And so the last ride that I had gotten was in a Prius, and it was quite not accommodating. So I passed up on the option to take that ride out for the main march.
But you get in.
And I don't know, but I managed. Some of the bones still bend. So I kind of looked around the room, and there was a woman, actually, the Tenzo was offering to do a little qigong practice before we went out, and I was still trying to settle, so I was like, I want to stick around for that. I want to go. I don't want to be in the Prius. And there was a couple of young folks that I was like, you guys are going, right? I'm like, oh yeah, no, we're going. It's like, okay.
Journalists
So
from Rhode Island.
well, so yeah, we stuck around for the qigong, got our layers all on. They said, meet you out in the car. I was, because I had sourced all sorts of supplies from the community, hand warmers, hats, balaclavas, things like that, just to pass out to people as we were going along. So I'm trying to get all of that shit straightened. And then I go out, and they had warned me in advance that the vehicle was a bit abrasive. And I had actually seen it in the parking lot when we returned from the airport. It sticks out like a sore thumb. It is a large black van with no windows on the sides. Black was not its native color, spray painted, and then hastily and intentionally written in bright red spray paint, fuck ICE. And this is the moment where most people probably would have gone, I made a big mistake.
And here I am thinking my parents are like, just keep Donnie safe. Okay? Don't worry. I'll keep Donnie safe.
So that was a journey in and of itself. The pair happened to be from Rhode Island. They had traveled in on journalistic exploits a week before just to get a read on what's going on the ground. Being non-natives, they had no frickin' clue where they were going. They had a contact who was meeting at her place, and then they were going to take a train to go to the gathering, but they couldn't touch base with her, but they had her address. They wanted also to see what's going on at the Whipple building. They wanted to do this, and they wanted to do that. And I was starting to feel like a bit of a thorn in the side, even though they were most gracious with everything. But eventually we figured out how far out of town we had traveled before we started trekking back. And as we made our way in, we came up to a stoplight, and I could see, people just walking. And I made the decision in that moment. I'm like, I know where the rally is being held. I know where the temple is. I know how to make my way through on a train. I'm good. So I just said, thanks for the ride, all the best for what you guys got going on, and parted ways there. Jumped into the crowd, which was really fun. Because again, are we going to the Target Center? I think so, but I don't know. I'm following those two. It's like good enough for me. And this guy was really neat. He asked me, I asked him if he was from the Twin Cities. He said, yeah. He said, where are you from? And I told him Marquette and about how he's a Buddhist priest coming in. And he looked at me and goes, I think you're probably the first Buddhist I've ever met.
Knowingly.
What is it? what are the basic teachings of Buddha? So marching into the protest, we got to have a little catch up on the Four Noble Truths and the middle way, and just kind of my personal approaches to practice, which was really awesome. He was really excited about, really interested in asking follow-up questions and digging in deeper. It was really nice. Yeah, really beautiful experience. And it continued for several blocks where it's like there's people streaming down the sidewalks, and then all of a sudden the people are streaming everywhere. I can't remember what it's called. I think it's like City Center Park, something like that. Just huge, massive, convenient. And I think I was technically about a half hour late because my ride didn't know where they were going. It's technically about a half hour late to the protest. So the march had already started, a half hour in front of us. And I'm sure you've seen pictures by now. It was just massive. I believe we probably snaked a good 5 to 6 city blocks from end to end. This was really, really awesome too. Someone mentioned to me at a rally just the other day how it feels weird to be marching in protest and be escorted by police. There weren't no police. We didn't have any police in Minneapolis. We had, protest marshals, people wearing high vis vests at every single intersection, 2 to 3 of them per intersection, per road,
Protest marshal, is that a
Yeah,
city?
a marshal's a
Is that-
no,
No.
no, no, no. It's a.
activists.
I was about to say it's a particular role for an organizer to take on. So a marshal is it's kind of like our security people that we have, our safety team that we have at our protests, but their explicit purpose is to watch traffic and make sure there's no issues with cars. Which I will say, I say no police, but at the other end of each block, police were down there blocking people before they got it. So it's not that they weren't there, they just weren't in the mix of it with us at all. People had, hot chocolate stands. People had, I mean, even at the airport, people were walking around just full boxes of, several hundred hand warmers, passing them out, hats and gloves being passed around. The chants were just wild. Every section has a different one. When one dies down, you hear another one here. Drums and horns and it was honestly
Beautiful.
It was joy. It was love. It was
unity.
It was unity is really what it was. But it's a joy of being together. And that's what it is. It's a joy that's built on all of the fear and anger. But it was joy regardless. It's just a massive crowd of 50,000 people there in community, loving one another, loving to be there, standing by each other, and
entirely
just
peaceful.
Yeah. It was just incredible. I simply can't explain it. So yeah, we proceeded down. I've seen the route now, probably 8-9 blocks total onto the Target Center, which fortunately isn't actually owned by Target. It's just named Target. Which anyways, they had a rally that they were holding indoors. It was originally outdoors, but Hillary Clinton was so understanding enough to cancel her book signing that was to be held in the Target Center that day.
Yeah.
And so our rally was moved inside. It took me 25 minutes to get from the edge of the sidewalk to the door. Probably took me 40 minutes to get from the door to the top of the escalator. That was where joy really exploded. They had a pep band in there playing off the balcony that was just jamming and jiving, and it was just amazing. I didn't stick around for too much of the rally. I didn't have my phone. I didn't have my wallet. That was all intentional. And I knew I had a brother waiting back at the temple, worrying about me every moment I was gone, as well as a mother back home worrying doubly so, some 100 miles away. But I got in, I listened to the first 4 or 5 speakers. They started with 3 indigenous leaders, which had really beautiful and moving thoughts. There was a black minister that gave a really impassioned speech. And then there was a Muslim leader of some sort that was giving a speech as I was making my exit. And I don't know if that again was only clergy. I don't know if they had any, organizing leaders or political leaders there. I didn't stick around long enough to find out. But the entourage that came in at the beginning of the rally was somewhere between 15 and 20, obviously clergy folk, including at least 2 or 3 brown robes down there. So some Buddhist representation in that mix as well.
There's a bunch of them.
And yeah, I made my way over to the Green Line, and on the way back, I got chatting with a ticket agent, and mentioned where I was from and what I was doing. And just as I got up to get off, I was grabbing myself the old stress cigarette, and a guy behind me goes, "Hey, is there any chance I could grab it?" Yeah. And then he goes, "Did I hear you're here from Marquette?" I said, "Yeah." He just goes, "Thank you. Thank you so much for
We heard
being
that
here."
over and over again.
That's only one instance that was continuously repeated.
Over and over again.
Wow.
So we Donnie took the ride back. Daiki took the ride back to the temple, and I had already, there was a Thich Nhat Hanh group meeting there to do some healing practice for EMTs and other public responders. I loaded up all our stuff and said goodbye to the temple and headed on over the river to our buddy Shinsen's house, where him and his wife made dinner for us. And the first day that I had warm toes since we left home, sleeping in a real bed, taking a shower with water that actually got warm. It was great. And again, hugs. Thank you for coming. Feeling of community through the whole trip. That was the whole first part of the trip. That was really, really jiving.
I want to interject here real quickly. Shinsen, I know at least one of you has practiced with him. He's someone that I don't know how much Roshin has, but I've practiced with quite a bit in my last several years of dedicated time spent out at Rumanji, and gotten to know him quite well. And we were sitting in that first period, the open sitting period, Friday morning, when he came through the door. And it was one of those that I meet so many people at Rumanji, and they come from so many different places. I never know who in the hell lives what, where, when, why, and how. So I had no idea in my mind that he was a part of that community. But he came walking through the door, and he settled onto a cushion in front of me. And it still was, permeating that Zazen brain. And the moment that it struck me that I recognize him, I know him, I love him, was the moment it really hit my heart, the full depth of what was going on. And what it really means to have someone, a loved person, who's caught in the middle of living in this space, in this time. And, tears immediately just fell, because that was the moment that brought it home. The stories with Keiko and with Yancey, with the people that we had breakfast with, they were stories to bear witness to, and they were good to take on, to be able to deliver to other people. But it really wasn't until I felt that connection that I have with Shinsen that it really hit me in my heart, how deep it was, what was going on there, and how painful it is for the people who this is their home, this is their community. I suddenly felt less of a tourist, I felt immediately connected. And it was a very pivotal moment. So I just want to share that in talking about Shinsen.
So yeah, then we had breakfast with Shinsen the next day, sat one little period of Zazen in his incredibly cold basement. Excellent practice. You know, if you're not fully mindful of the moment, you just start shivering like mad. Got in our car and started driving. Um, and that's when we started to really process and pick through the trip. Um, again, the sense of anxiety and fear was constant. Um, the the one moment that really broke my heart and continues to break my heart, those warm, beautiful Buddhist monks that welcomed us into their temple hardly knew us. You know, we've practiced with some of their relatives here and there, Dharma relatives. Um, the day that we were preparing for that big protest on Friday, those strangers, you know, from Rhode Island were, as you would expect at a Buddhist temple, were welcomed in, treated kindly, questioned, you know, deeply about their own feelings. You know, where are you coming from? You know, what is your religious background, um, spiritual background? And Daiki took off for the protest, and I bowed out the last person leaving for the protest. We were both chanting the Enmei Juku Ken and Gyo at each other as she backed out of the door. Lovely, lovely, lovely practitioners. Um, but it shocked the hell out of me. 5:30 came around and I still hadn't seen Daiki yet. I wasn't surprised or afraid or anything, but I saw her come in and I said, "Hey, did you happen to see my brother at the protest? Do you know who we got a ride with?" And she immediately got into mom worry mode. That's totally expected. Totally expected. But this is the real punch in the chest, was that she immediately jumped to suspicion of those two people that she had broken bread with that morning, those strangers that she had welcomed into the temple. I had no questions or doubts that they were honest people and that Donnie was safe and that he was just getting going. But to see her immediately jump on suspicion that these people meant Donnie harm, that these people might have been the wrong crowd. His body language was very weird. You know, did you notice that? Did you see the vehicle that maybe they were, you know, planted? Do you think he's safe? And that just killed me. I've cried about that a couple of times now. On the drive back, we discovered that while we were sitting zazen, 6 or 7 blocks away from where Renee was shot, we found out that Alex Peretti was shot. And if that wasn't bad enough, we started to realize that during Friday's massive, beautiful, unifying, peaceful protests, ICE knew that a lot of the people would be there, right? And they used that as an opportunity to start raiding communities. Luckily, there were more reactionary folk there who were literally putting their bodies in front of federal agents who pulled into neighborhoods and began knocking on doors, looking through people's mail to see if they had a Spanish sounding last name, kicking in doors without warrants, not even, you know, they're beyond the pretend warrants. That sense of unity, again, has a strong sense of anxiety underneath it. We were across the road from a middle school. I didn't see a damn child the whole time we were there.
Well,
Yeah.
I was going to say that's kind of a perfect segue to lay out they're not doing school in person. They're doing school digitally. People are actively hiding families in their households. There are white taxis, Caucasian folks that are driving their friends and family around so that they can get to appointments if they have to, or who are simply going grocery shopping in their stead. The day that we were there, there was at least one church shut down, one for housing people who needed it, but another one for medical triage for people being brutalized in the midst of raids and protests. Again, as we mentioned, businesses are locked down, and you'll be allowed in if they're open. You'll be allowed in after they meet you at the door and verify that you're not ICE. If there was ever a time that we're like, this is the moment where it's bad enough, this is the moment.
So the businesses weren't in business.
Well, and Friday was a strike day, so many of them were actually closed intentionally on Friday. But there are businesses, if they're owned by people who feel like they're in danger, there are people who are not opening their businesses or who have made agreements. I've since found out from someone in Marquette who has a daughter who owns a yarn shop, and next door is a market of some sort. And they have come in the back door if they come and lock yourselves in this bathroom, and they won't be able to go back there. That's staff area, and we'll shield you. All of those precautions are happening, which shows you how terrible and how dire it is. But all of the community response is there as well. No matter what the undercurrent of fear, anxiety, or concern is, the reaction is that people
coming together
are meeting their neighbors if they haven't before. Their neighbors are becoming their family. Their friends are becoming their family. They are banding together. Since we've been back, I know of at least one other person who's also made a trip out there. I know of another one who's planning to. There's people going out to help them there, and plenty more have reached out to know if they could on some level, which to me, unless you have a network established already, you're just going to be a burden. You need to go in with a plan. But for me, coming back, a lot of it has been this past week has been in landing and grounding and really turning to recognize what we experienced in the trauma and the terror and the fact that people are surviving instead of living. I've had this energy around me that I've felt, and I've waited for it to dissipate, but the energy has been that people here are waking up. People in Marquette are coming together. I've been part of organizing this past year. It's been rural and slow and up and down. But I felt this energy, and now at the end of this week, whatever fog I had from having been there myself has dissipated, and I've realized that no, it's not just me. It's not just my brother that is now immediately activated, that is now digging in deeper to find ways to organize and build community and share in relationship. Marquette in and of itself is on fire. When we got back, literally as we got off the road and dropped my friend's car at his house, my group, We the People, had organized a candlelight vigil down at the post office that had 60 people in attendance for Alex Preddy, who had died that morning. They organized in one day and had 60 people show up in the cold. This week we had another, rally that we organized in very short time, and we had a similar showing. My parents just shared with me last night that Friday night in Alpena, much smaller, much more isolated community than Marquette, although similar in the fact that it's kind of the only spot anywhere around that's got anything going on. In Alpena, they had 50 to 60 people show up for a vigil Friday night for Alex Preddy. It was printed on the front page of the newspaper the next morning, And then they had a protest against ICE the next morning, which had 60 to 100 people show up as well. And again, very last minute organized things, and they're turning out the same numbers we're getting over here. We have a weekly protest at our post office that's held every Saturday. I haven't been in months, and I was talking with my teacher for most of it yesterday. But I kind of bowed out to him real fast because I wanted to at least catch the last 5-10 minutes. And I was expecting, because most weeks you come down the last 5-10 minutes, it would be thinning out. What's been more recently like 20 to 30 people would be thinning out a little bit at a time. They were full force. I could hear them down the block, honks all around. We were on all four corners of the intersection of the street, lined up in front of the post office all the way down the other side of the street, lined all the way down. Everyone was remarking, because believe it or not, a lot of the people I interact with in these organizing capacities are on the older side of things. All of them were looking at me saying, "Isn't this beautiful? Isn't this wonderful? Glad to see you. Look at all the young people." So again, that it's being recognized. The moment is calling to action what it needs to. And I feel that that's the least we can take heart in.
Yes, I just want to we got to come to an end sooner or later here. Reiterate that you're not seeing everything on the news. The community gathering together is beautiful. The things that they're gathering for are disgusting. People are being detained. Again, citizens, legal immigrants are being detained at the Whipple building, having their phones and wallets taken from them, and sometimes released hours or days after they were picked up.
Without legal representation.
During that time, no access to legal representation. They are immediately dumped in front of the building. Again, with no phone call to organize transport for them, not dropped off in the city center where they can get some help. This is off and outside of the town. So there are, volunteers. He mentioned protests, and I'm sure you've seen protests in front of the Whipple building, but what you're not seeing is across the street from it is a nonstop group of volunteers giving people coats, giving people clothing to wear, giving people cell phones so that they can, call family members to get home, or just giving people rides home. They have also been taking people, especially if you're Somali, they've been taking some of these people down to the detainment facility in Texas and then releasing them. Again, these are people who are here illegally, detained for anywhere from a day to a week, transported to different facilities, trafficked to different facilities, and then just released. And so again, down in Texas right now, there are people who are organizing rides for people back to the Twin Cities. People gathering together to pay rent for some of these legal citizens who just, cannot get back home in time to pay their rent, pay their utility, and maintain their employment and their living space. I don't mean to be doom and gloom, but people are hiding their neighbors. Please act accordingly. Try to find any local networks you can.
Organize locally.
Organize locally.
Please find it. They're not stopping in the Twin Cities.
No.
We already know that they're up here.
Oh yeah.
They have started hitting southern Michigan noticeably, and there are agents moving into Marquette and Houghton County as we speak.
Yeah.
Not as of yet. That said, as well as organize and get in touch with community, as well as build spaces for peace, healing, and resilience, as we are wont to do in this community. We will be sending out an email to the mailing list with this recording for anyone that wants to watch it after the fact. And I will also be adding on there a list of resources of places that you can donate to support many of these efforts, with people being able to pay their rent, people being able to provide phones for people, and all of that stuff as well. So please give that a look over. If you have any dollars you can throw in a fund or two.
So the recording is gonna be sent to.
Yep.
Who, on the email?
To the
Yeah.
email list. Yep, to the whole
Oh,
email list. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, great.
Do you, on the other end of the Zoom box, you've been awfully quiet this period. Do you have any specific thoughts or questions that you'd like to share? Anyone? Danny, Amy, John, or Phil?
That's a lot to process. I want to thank you both for doing what you've done, and representing everybody. You talked a little bit about how your experiences impacted you, and I'm just interested, as you're thinking about it, of course, crisis, not crisis, not crisis, crisis, it's the same thing, right? How what you think some of the lessons you might be learning from these experiences that you just bring back just to regular practice. I'm just curious if you've thought about that.
Personally, I feel like the everydayness of our practice is more deeply penetrating than it has been before.
Mhm.
Before going out there, the last several years living at the Zendo, I've been very self-conscious about being an intentionally impoverished person, and doing good work. And it felt like I couldn't see exactly what it was that I was doing or what good it meant for the world. Um, and I was kind of always a little hesitant with how I spent my time, and a little anxiety ridden at what would be best, and not being able to get to sewing, not being able to get to this or that. Um, that's kind of vanished. Um, I'm now regularly in communication with an obscene amount of people to organize the things that I'm trying to do. And I don't have a moment to question if it's the right thing to do. Um, and it also makes it that much more urgent to spend the moments when I go, what's next? Maybe it's breathing, to just breathe. Maybe it's knitting, to just knit, and to be able to take those pauses from doing the work, to return to the being, is what I would have to say to that.
I'm still not sure. Like you said, there's a lot to process, and I've had a whole week to process it. I feel convicted, as I do every day, more and more in our practice. Um, and like Donnie said, I've been really using this as an opportunity to be as present as possible with my daughters.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know what I will, how this will affect my practice overall. But I mean, I feel that push to continue to try to see the good in all people. Try to see that everybody is just as confused and angry and lashing out, perhaps not in the right direction. Seeing people who have taken the same vows as me be that suspicious, makes me want to make that a practice, take that practice on myself as much as I can, to remain as open. That through all of this, and again, we we didn't allow ourselves too much space while we were there. And Daiki was like, God, I didn't even think about that until you put words to it. But the people we met there in every community were dripping trauma. It was traumatic for Daiki and I to witness. And again, we weren't on these front lines. We weren't, seeing these direct actions. We were just feeling from the people around us. It hurt me. Shinsen, here he is, in his house, a safe place, and I could just feel the tiredness, the sheer trauma of it all. This is the same community that had the George Floyd murder how many years ago? Philandro Castile shot on the side of the road a few years ago. It's a community that has been brutalized and over policed, despite declining crime rates. All I can take away from it is this is the time that we have. I keep thinking of that Lord of the Rings line. It's not up to us to judge, the moment that we're in so much as to choose what to do while we're here. And that's where we're at. Act accordingly. Nobody wants to be in this situation, but we just need to keep breathing, keep being aware. Don't shut out that pain. Really feel like we got to share the load when it comes to that stuff. That's all I have.
If anyone has anything else, or shall we move on to parting Gata?
We've got Amy in here. 1 second.
What strikes me is that I'm feeling some deficits of feeling because I've spent brief times in Germany 8 years in a row in being associated with the luge program. And I've been to Dachau twice. I took my daughter to Dachau. And I've done a lot of reading on the Holocaust, the White Rose Society, which is a group of students in Munich who tried to stop Hitler's actions. And I always viewed all of that learning and knowledge as history. And your relating the experience in Minneapolis makes me realize that the history is ongoing. It's nothing stopped in some respects of state oppression, manipulation. I worked 40 years as a social worker, so I'm not inexperienced in seeing deprivation and dispossession, but it's too easy. It's been too easy to forget. I've been retired for 18 years, so it's been too easy to forget sometimes about stuff that people go through in having fear and want and need. So I appreciate you're making the effort to get to Minneapolis. One of my, I have a Dharma brother in Minneapolis. We were lay ordained at Upaya 20 years ago, last December, 25 years ago, last December. And I'm wondering if he participated. I've lost track of him. I'm going to have to look him up.
What was his name?
Toby. Right now, I can't even think of his last name. He- He's uh, from Traverse City, Elk Rapids. That's where his home was. Retired,
My ears open.
and I imagine he was there somewhere. Yeah.
I
Oh, so thank you for doing what you did and for sharing.
I wanted to share first off on the note of Holocaust. Pogroms. Pogroms are effectively what is going on. We have a roving army that is going around brutalizing, harassing, and foisting and detaining people. The other thing I wanted to add on to that is, speaking about history and whether this is current or historical, is I keep hearing the repeated notion from the African American community in particular that this moment for white people is kind of a welcome to the table. Again, George Floyd, Philando Castile, the Black Lives Matter movement that erupted in 2020 is on behalf of the fact that this has been going on for people of color in our country since its inception. Now it is getting worse for them, but now it is also starting to touch the Caucasian society as well.
Some of us
Yeah.
touch some of us.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Everydayness is also being beaten by the police. That's an element of everydayness that we tend to overlook, as John said. We easily lose sight of that when we have privileges and things in our own lives that shield us from those realities, right? But every day, the everydayness of America has been police beatings, has been colonization, has been appropriation of people's lands. That is a matter of everydayness in the history of this country, and we're seeing that the long arc of history is never done. It's always right here, right under our feet.
This big loop. No beginning.
Well, I have a different take on that a bit because I have 4 or 5 close relatives who've been in law enforcement. But the closest was my father-in-law, who was sheriff for many, many years in Alpena, which was mentioned earlier. And all of my relatives in law enforcement had a different take on it. He never, ever said law enforcement. He never used the word police. His mantra was that he was a peace officer. And that's how the community viewed him. And that's why he never lost an election. That's why he was sheriff for 30 years. So I think I've been alienated from the worst of that stuff by living in this rural area for so long.
Well, my father was a policeman for 30 years, and I saw what being a policeman did to him. Um, the bifurcation in his psyche that he had to engage in to do that work was kind of had a real impact on his personality. And he wasn't someone who went around beating people over the head with a nightstick, but he saw that stuff happening with younger policemen. He'd been, when he was nearing the time he was going to retire, it's an interesting thing to think of. The perpetrators, right? They have to live with this stuff too.
I want to read what Amy texted to the group here. Kids and I have been listening with full appreciation for the scope of what you're sharing and look forward to the replay and to share it out. We are also asking what's next and looking to do the next right thing. Gotta love that movie Frozen. To what Donnie just summarized, I am convicted to begin offering daily online Zoom connection hours of conversation, meditative presence, poetry, and other joyful shares of art. The next right thing. We love you and our world.
that? Oh, Nishpumi?
Mhm.
Okay.
Neighbor
That's
out
a
Nishpami.
Neighbor. Yeah.
Shall we
Hi, Amy.
Just absorbing the fear, that survival now of the kids, how it's impacting the next generation,
Yeah.
you know. And it's almost like they need to be, there needs to be attention paid to their psyche to
Mhm.
kind of counteract what they're experiencing now. Because that's going to be with them forever, you know. So that's what I think of.
That was the next heart-touching moment for me, was realizing that I was going to have to tell my nieces that I'm planning to go back. And
Mm,
now we've been home for a week and we've been talking about everything going on. And as much as we know they marked there was danger before, now
Yeah.
there's a little more depth to that. Yeah.
and it struck me when you said that during the protests, because everyone was at the protests, that they continued their going to homes and the
Mhm.
I said to Daiki, we showed our true colors by coming out and unifying as a community and protesting peacefully. And they showed their true colors by sneaking into communities and visiting violence upon peaceful people, law abiding,
so, and
tax
it's
paying
almost like
citizens.
a struggle between, you know, between the federal government and the state, you know, like police, if something happens, you call police. Well, what the, do the police have any power against the, I mean, what's the dynamic with that? What's going on? That's the rub, you know.
Yeah.
Well, now there's, but did you see any National Guard? There was supposed to be National Guard.
No, I didn't see
And-
any.
They were
Yeah.
arriving.
I know-
They were arriving when we left.
Yeah, that was, I was about to say, they called the National Guard, like they were on ready before we got there. They actually deployed them in the wake of Alex Petty's shooting. So that
Okay.
was literally as we were on our way out.
And I thought state police were supposed to be too.
I'm sure there's state police, I mean, just like here,
Every-
I'm sure
every-
there's state police out there.
Yeah, but every reporting I've heard about state police and specifically about the Minnesota National Guard is that they were acting as a line between ICE and protesters and handing out cocoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do they, I mean, how can they affect, you know, how can they,
Well, they could enforce that. The real upsetting thing is that somebody could enforce the law, right? I mean, they have a law on the books in Minnesota that says that police officers cannot cover their faces. But
Right.
as the LAPD sheriff came out and said the other day, they're not going to enforce that law because they just think it's a bad idea for armed people to approach armed people and tell them to obey the law. But I mean, we could,
Yeah, that's not the conversation for this moment. That's,
no,
Yeah.
we just wanted to share what we witnessed.
she commitment.
let's gather ourselves together and sign off here.
Yeah, let's do our parting gata.
Our hearts together for the end of the day.
Hey, thank you, Daiki and Roshin. Brave man.
May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be happy. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be well. Thank you all for being here with us.
Thank you.
Good day.
Be safe.